Maybe it's other people's reactions to us that make us who we are.
Decades after its 1993 debut, fans of the science fiction series The X-Files may fondly recall its complex mythology about alien invasion, super soldiers, and sinister black oil. But arguably, its most lasting legacy is the love story between Agent Box Mulder and Agent Dana Scully.
You made me a whole person. I owe you everything.
It's a relationship that didn't always exist on screen. In fact, it originated with, and was largely kept alive by, a vocal subset of viewers who pined for Mulder and Scully to get together.
I think it's remotely plausible that someone might think you're hot.
X-Files fans called this shipping, short for relationshipping, the act of rooting for a romantic relationship between two fictional characters. This desire is nothing new. As early as 1913, devotees of Jane Austen were writing fan fiction that romantically paired up characters from across all of her novels. In the 70s, Trekkers wrote Star Trek fanzine stories that saw Captain Kirk romancing Mr. Spock.
This simple feeling is beyond Vader's comprehension.
But as the internet bloomed in the 1990s, fans were suddenly able to share and debate these feelings with each other on a previously unthinkable scale. The X-Files became ground zero for the explosion of shipping as a common, if controversial, part of fandom, for everything from sitcoms to Star Wars. Here's our take on the evolution of shipping, from the X-Files to the rise of Skywalker, the reasoning behind it, and the effects that rooting for love can have on the things we love.
Are these two gonna hook up?
No, and only the lame fans want that.
Don't tell me how to enjoy things.
Hi everyone! So if you haven't checked it out yet, we have a brand new series on the Netflix Film Club YouTube channel.
It's called Take Two, and it features us debating some of the big ideas that define movies, TV, and pop culture.
If you're anything like us, then you know that discussing movies,
and even disagreeing about them,
is all part of loving movies.
Whether, like me, you're drawn to stories that don't give you what you want, with endings that destroy you.
Or, like me, you prefer heroic journeys that lift your spirits. Take Two is the place to hash it out.
Take Two lets us play out these conversations that we're always having as a video essay,
to open up the debate and get your take.
So after you watch this video, please go watch the new episode of Take Two on Netflix Film Club YouTube channel, and you can really show us your support by liking, commenting, telling us what you think, and sharing with your friends.
2 takes,
2 sides,
1 new series.
Take Two.
Check it out
on the Netflix Film Club YouTube channel.
From its debut in 1993, The X-Files combined serialized storylines with a Monster of the Week format, alternating episodes that explored its ever-widening mythology with ones where Mulder and Scully investigated various standalone cases. Mulder and Scully's evolving partnership was the through line that held all of this together, so it's understandable that fans immediately fixated on where that relationship might be headed.
In my book, I'd written that Agent Scully falls in love, but that's obviously impossible. Agent Scully is already in love.
The two are a classic odd couple pairing. Box Mulder is a believer. His work for the X-Files division of the FBI, investigating unsolved and hard-to-solve cases, is driven by a conviction that, as the opening credits promised, the truth is out there.
I am determined to follow a lead that may result in the proof of the existence of extraterrestrial biological entities.
Dana Scully is a doctor and a skeptic, always searching for the rational, scientific explanation.
You don't honestly believe this is some kind of an extraterrestrial?
She's supposed to keep Mulder's crazy theories in check, and from the very beginning, this creates a natural friction.
Why don't you just admit it, Scully? You're determined not to believe him.
Well, maybe you're too determined to believe him.
The X-Files only offers occasional glimpses into their personal lives. We really only know them through their work. And from the audience's perspective, they're the most important people in each other's worlds.
Mulder, I wouldn't put myself on the line for anybody but you.
As their working relationship evolves into a true partnership, Mulder and Scully gradually become closer to each other. Their dynamic becomes difficult to define, which leaves plenty of room for speculation. Is there something more lurking beneath the surface?
I must remind you, this goes against the Bureau's policy of male and female agents consorting in the same hotel room while on assignment.
This growing romantic tension is something the show was deliberately trying to avoid, at least early on. Series creator Chris Carter gave an interview in The X-Files' first season saying, "I would call it a cerebral romance in that these characters sort of delight in each other's approaches, and it isn't the pat or standard or expected television romance between them." There is no physicality between them. I don't see it in the near future here. And while there are a few flirtatious moments, at least initially, the series sticks to its guns. Mulder and Scully's interactions in early seasons are mostly serious-minded debates between believer and skeptic, not romantic banter.
Mulder, it's the same story I've heard since I was a kid. It's a folk tale, a myth.
I heard the same story when I was a kid, too. Funny thing is, I believed it.
They're too busy chasing down man-beasts, pyrokinetics, and werewolves to think about falling in love. But the show's reluctance to explore Mulder and Scully's relationship only made it more tantalizing.
You spend every day with Agent Scully, a beautiful, enchanting woman. I mean, you two never, I confess, I find that shocking. I've seen how you two gaze at one another.
The X-Files debuted in 1993, right as the expansion of the internet was creating a whole new world for fan engagement.
Alt.nerd.obsessive.
By the end of the first season, there were multiple X-Files news groups, including one dedicated entirely to trading fan fiction. While the show itself played it cool, fans found an outlet for exploring their own feelings about Mulder and Scully's relationship, arguing with each other about the significance of every fleeting touch or interaction.
You okay?
Meanwhile, anti-shippers, who called themselves no-romos, short for no romance, were no less vocal that Mulder and Scully should remain platonic, dismissing the very idea as cliched, cheesy, or out of character.
We just spooned up and fell asleep like little baby cats. Isn't that right, honey bunch?
That's right, poopy hen.
Yet, as the show went on, the chemistry between David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson became undeniable. And over the no-romos objections, and despite Chris Carter's original intentions, the potential for a physical romance between Mulder and Scully became a playful subtext within the series itself, which seemed to toy with the shippers' most fervent desires.
Scully? What are you wearing?
In response, Carter wrote the season 3 episode Syzygy specifically to quash that rising movement, to show just how incompatible Mulder and Scully were for each other.
Look, we've been working together for, 2 years now? We have differing opinions, but I didn't expect you to ditch me.
I didn't ditch you.
Fine, whatever.
But it didn't work. Even through the bickering, shippers could see just how much the two cared for each other.
You're my 1 in 5 billion.
And eventually the show surrendered to the inevitable. In the 1998 X-Files film, Fight the Future, a near kiss between Mulder and Scully was played for both comic and dramatic effect. And as David Duchovny prepared to leave the show in its 7th season, Mulder and Scully went from sharing a genuine kiss to ending up in bed together. When The X-Files ended its original run in 2002, the final scene found Mulder and Scully in each other's arms, suggesting this is where the show had been headed all along.
Maybe there's hope.
As the franchise spawned another X-Files movie and 2 series revivals, Mulder and Scully were seen living together and even conceiving a child together. Twice.
You are a father.
What are you talking about?
Yet, as Entertainment Weekly's Darren Franich wrote, their relationship is hazy, full of history that we, the audience, and maybe the characters, don't really understand. Much of it still existed in the margins, to be filled in by the viewers' imaginations. By never really defining their relationship, the X-Files continued to foster Mulder and Scully shipping, even after they got together.
Mulder, do you think of me as old?
No, Scully, you still got it going on.
Clearly, their relationship gave fans something more than just titillation.
I know you. You can't give up. It's what I saw in you when we first met. It's what made me follow you. Why I'd do it all over again.
With their complementary personalities and smoldering looks, Mulder and Scully were a perfect storm for shipping.
I was told once that the best way to regenerate body heat is to crawl naked into a sleeping bag with somebody else who's already naked.
Maybe if it rains sleeping bags, you'll get lucky.
But in the anything-goes world of the internet, there's no limit to the characters who can be shipped. This is true even when the work itself doesn't offer much to support it. When Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows was published in 2007, some fans were furious that Harry didn't wind up with Hermione, despite the utter lack of evidence that this fantasy hookup was in the cards. Author J.K. Rowling has claimed that she only discovered Harry Potter shippers close to the end of writing the series, after she'd already paired off most of her characters in blissful ignorance. Still, the fact that Rowling had no intention of suggesting any chemistry between Harry and Hermione certainly didn't stop shippers from imagining it, or between Harry and just about anybody. What accounts for this impulse among shippers to create these feelings and devote themselves to it, even when it's not backed up on the page?
Is there something I can do for you, Captain? Like what?
Unsurprisingly, it often has less to do with the characters than it does with ourselves. As psychologist Dr. Lynn Zubernis explains, shipping is about exploring our own identity. We're all going around looking for depictions of our own romantic, sexual, and emotional fantasies. Dr. Zubernis says, shipping is a self-narrative therapy. Zubernis refers to the idea of love maps, coined by sexologist John Money to describe the mental templates we use as blueprints for the attributes we tend to look for in romantic partners. When we find characters who fit some aspect of our love maps, we fantasize about them being with another character we identify with, as a way of experimenting with our desires.
I'm seeing a whole new side of you, Mulder.
Is that a good thing?
I like it.
This freedom helps to explain the prevalence of same-sex pairings within shipping, which gives fans a healthy outlet to explore their own sexuality. In the 90s, a vocal contingent of fans wanted to see Xena, warrior princess, in a romance with her sidekick Gabrielle, something the producers had deliberately teased throughout the show.
Are you sitting on the soap? I was wondering what that was.
But as co-creator Rob Tappert explained to Entertainment Weekly, the studio was so concerned that it would be perceived as a lesbian show that they would not allow us to have Xena and Gabrielle in the same frame of the opening titles.
I'm here because I want to be here. I love you, Xena. I love you too, Gabrielle.
Instead, their relationship blossomed on the internet, where fans wrote countless stories pairing the two, contributing to Xena becoming a lesbian icon.
People who wanted to could read as much into it as they wanted. It was seeded in there from the start, I guess.
Shipping often allows people who feel marginalized to write their own stories and to put aspects of themselves into narratives where they have been excluded.
It is very much a platonic affair, if you will, in our version anyway. And there are other versions which I'm sure you know about.
This can be empowering in ways besides exploring romantic fantasies. As Elise Wax recalls in her overview of X-Files fandom for Sci-Fi Wire, shipping in the 1990s offered a refuge for female fans who often felt excluded by the toxicity of other sci-fi discussions online. Of course, the intensity of feelings around shipping can lead to animosity as well. Among Twilight's fandom, Team Edward and Team Jacob continue to hash it out over which one deserves to end up with Bella Swan.
I can give you more than him. I mean, he probably can't even kiss you without hurting you.
And nearly 2 decades after Buffy the Vampire Slayer ended, debate still rages over whether Buffy was better off with the brooding yet sensitive Angel or the brooding yet insensitive Spike.
Spike understood a different part of who Buffy was, and I think she needed to understand that and discover that.
You can't argue with the one that we know, that is the first, that is the most important.
As for Xena, the online arguments between fans who did see a lesbian subtext versus those who denied it flared up into what was then termed a shipping war, a protracted battle that many saw as a parallel to the real-world struggle over gay rights. Because shipping is often about externalizing our own innermost desires, it can be personally hurtful when those desires are dismissed or shamed. This has created a tendency for shippers to be unusually invested in protecting these invented relationships, something that can occasionally turn hostile.
Every community has its dark underbelly, don't you think?
As Dr. Zubernis explains, if their pairing doesn't win out in canon or popularity, then their personal fantasies are under attack. It can lead to antagonism and in-group, out-group fighting. And more, that antagonism has even been directed at creators themselves. Social media has made it much easier for fans to talk directly to creators than it was in the X-Files heyday, which has made it far more difficult for those creators to ignore shipping outright.
I'm really trying, but I can't get the Rowena, Sam ship out of my head.
Sometimes this is a positive. Hannibal showrunner Brian Fuller openly supported the many fans who shipped Hannibal Lecter and Will Graham, not only defending them on Twitter, but even ending the series with the characters locked in a close embrace, seemingly validating all those who champion their subtextual romance. As Jessica Mason wrote of the episode at the Mary Sue, this was a step for representation, and having a showrunner that actively supported a queer ship and who is an out gay man himself, that was awesome.
Is Hannibal in love with me?
Still, Hannibal and Will Graham only get together in death. Viewers don't have to see how this romance between an FBI agent and a serial killer would actually play out.
What hatches follows its own nature and is beyond me.
Often there are fans who want to see their shipping fantasies realized, regardless of what it might mean for the show. As Professor Ben-Sanane wrote for Psychology Today, shippers have no patience for anything else. Whatever does not move the two characters towards each other is time and energy wasted. And once they are together, happily engaged, everything else is seen as a distraction from showing the two of them holding hands, being happy.
We spent 5 years wanting Olivia and Fitz to be together.
Her primary story is a romance. That's what you've seen. Because to me, her primary story has been a discovery of herself.
And this can sometimes have debilitating effects on the overall story. An example of this can be found on Veronica Mars, where the teen detective and troubled bad boy Logan had a surprise hookup in the first season that was the culmination of a long simmering tension.
You want to pretend it never happened? No argument here.
Fans went nuts, and the pairing of Lovie, as the shippers called it, quickly became a major focus of the show.
Maybe we should just keep it to ourselves for a while and see what happens.
Needed mop closets, pass each other secret notes in the hallway.
But inevitably, that tension dissipated. Their relationship lost its chemistry, and fans began to complain.
And it isn't gonna change. And if you can't accept that, this isn't gonna work.
By the time of the show's 4th season revival, creator Rob Thomas had also had enough. The ship that helped launch the show had nearly killed it. And for Veronica Mars to go on, Lovie had to end. If a creator's heart isn't in it, trying to please shippers usually ends pleasing nobody.
Well, I guess you don't know everything about women yet.
Shipping has long been a part of Star Wars fandom. After The Empire Strikes Back was released, 1980s fans were adamant that Princess Leia should end up with Luke Skywalker, not Han Solo. And George Lucas is definitely lucky Twitter wasn't around when Return of the Jedi was released.
My sister has it. Yes. It's you, Leia.
But there was no escaping the many shippers who spent much of the more recent Star Wars trilogy insisting that Rey and Kylo Ren would go from enemies to lovers.
You know I can take whatever I want.
After years of waging bitter online war, Reylos got their wish, sort of, with the rise of Skywalker. But the fleeting kiss between Rey and Kylo was too rushed to satisfy those who wanted them to fall in love.
Something has happened that has completely destroyed a large portion of the Reylo fans and made them lose their mind. They're ready to watch the world burn.
And it crossed an unforgivable line for fans opposed to it. It was criticized as empty fan service, a capitulation to shippers that engaged them only on the most superficial terms. What shippers really wanted was the kind of fully realized relationship they'd been imagining. As Star Wars fan fiction creator Rika explained in The Atlantic, honestly, fan fiction would have done it better. Fan fiction has done it better. One of the main criticisms of shipping is that this kind of engagement often crosses over into entitlement. Fans want to give input into where a story should go and expect creators to listen to them. Some have turned to simple advocacy, like the online campaign petitioning Disney to give Frozen's Elsa a girlfriend.
I want to show you something. May I?
But others have become far more antagonistic. In 2014, fans of BBC's Sherlock, who'd long shipped the famous detective and his companion Watson, became so incensed at Watson's impending fictional marriage, they sent death threats to the actress playing his wife.
Well, it's the end of an era, isn't it?
John and Mary. Domestic bliss.
Still, these are extreme examples. Fans just have to remember that shipping is about opening up new possibilities, not closing them off. Which means not allowing the desire to see two characters fall in love to destroy the thing we love. And that ultimately, shipping is a form of personal expression. It's about empowering fans to create things for themselves, not forcing their own ideas onto everyone else. For all its creative ups and downs, The X-Files always maintained one constant. Fans remained heavily invested in the will they or won't they romance of Mulder and Scully, long after it became clear that they would, and did.
Mulder, you have to calm down.
Scully, put a dimmer on that afterglow.
The duo offer a surprisingly lasting model of shipping that tells us it's about more than just seeing two characters fall in love. It's about creating a controlled space for us to play out our very real feelings in safely imaginary scenarios. In a 2014 essay for The Atlantic, Eric Schulmiller elaborated on the sense of power and reassurance that shipping provides, writing, "As fans, people may not be the author of the fictional worlds they love to inhabit, but when they ship, they can momentarily grab the wheel in the most exhilarating of ways. envisioning and championing relationships that demonstrate their own mastery of a created universe, and their true feelings about how love should exist in that world, if not indeed in their own. At its best, shipping is about making a genuine connection, not just with fictional characters, but with ourselves and each other. In other words, it's pretty romantic.
Can you hold me?
I can do that.
2 takes, 2 sides, 1 new series. Take 2. Check it out on the Netflix Film Club YouTube channel.